Okay, so we had seen the general halacha that's brought from that they decided Nimna V'Gamru in the Aliyah that a person does not have to sacrifice himself for the mitzvahs of the Torah. If he's put into the position of giving up his life, he doesn't have to do so, except for Gil Rai, Shvichas Dam, and Avodah Zarah. But Avodah Zarah, we saw there's a taka machlekes about. One Madama says that Avodah Zarah you don't have to. We're going like the Madama says you do have to be Ma'aseh Nefesh for Avodah Zarah. But the Mishnah said a couple of important rules that even not Avodah Zarah, if they say if someone's asked to be killed during the time of a Gezerah, B'shas Gezeres HaMalchus, so then we don't want there to be a ruach, we don't want there to be a spirit that the government can impose on us not to keep the mitzvah, so therefore a person is required to sacrifice his life. And the same thing would apply also be'fahesya, when people are seeing it openly, then they're going to have to be ma'aseh nefesh on that as well. So now the Gemara continues on the top line on Ayin Daled Amid Beis. The Kama b'fahesya. How many people do you need for it to be considered b'fahesya? That on any mitzvah you're going to have to be ma'aseh nefesh. I will just note. I was just thinking about this today. Of all the halachas that a person should know, probably Hilchas Mesiras Nefesh, Kiddush Hashem is important because it's very rare that you have the opportunity to ask a Rav when these type of questions come up. So, Amar Rav Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ein b'fahesya pchusa me'asar b'nei Adam. Has to be 10 people. So the Pshita Yisrael Binan, and that we say you need 10 people. It means 10 people who are Yidden. Because the Torah says you should be Mekadesh yourself b'toich b'nei Yisrael, and we had said before that we brought this pasuk Mikdashti b'seich b'nei Yisrael as the support for the Manda Amar who said that you have to be Mekadeshem Shemayim and be Ma'aseh Nefesh. I'm sorry, what was that? The guy by the Manda Amar who said that you have to, even on Avodah Zarah, you don't have to, right? So that's a different pasuk. I'm sorry. Yeah, v'nikdashti b'seich b'nei Yisrael. I think that's the same pasuk. Dalid l'chal l'shem kodshim v'nikdashti b'seich b'nei Yisrael. Right. So that's the same pasuk that tells you b'far hesya by avodas kechavim, which according to him you don't have to be mekadeshem by avodas zara, but if it's b'far hesya you do, and that same pasuk will apply in all the mitzvahs. It's not just on avodas zara. We'd already seen this.
Today, earlier we said that Benikdashti tells you.
We said that according to the Manda Amar, who says that you don't have to be Ma'aseh Nefesh by Avodah Zarah, but if it's by Fahasi, you do.
Right.
We said that from this pasuk.
Right.
Right. So we're saying, but it says, but Tzayich B'nei Yisrael. So we so that's what the pasuk is. That's what Gemara is applying here, even though we never said that this is the pasuk of. But we had that earlier, according to the other Mandam. It's the same, but it's the same. Will be the same cheshbon, and since it says B'seich B'nei Yisrael, that tells you it has to be Yidden. Boy Rav Yirmiyah, Tisha Yisrael v'Nachri Echad Ma'al. What if you have 10 Yidden and one guy? Is that considered still B'seich B'nei Yisrael? Tashma the Tani Rav Yanai, Achva the Rav Chia bar Abba, Rav Yanai the brother of Chia bar Abba, Asya Teich. We learn it out of Gzeir Shava. Ksiv Hachav Nikdashti B'seich B'nei Yisrael. That's why we know that b'fahesya, when there's 10 people, you have to be Ma'aseh Nefesh. Ksiv Hasam Hivdelu Metoicha Eida Hazais. Now this is really, I think, where we get to 10 people also. That means Eida is always 10. Eida we know is a minion. It's a 10. I don't remember where, but we learned it out from some other place where it says Eida and it says specifically 10. And it also says over there, that's also talking about all Yidden. That's Adas Kairach. It says you have to separate yourself from Adas Kairach. So it's all Yidden. So we see Allah Nasara, just like you see over there, it says Ada and it's Asara, and V'kulu Yisrael, and it's all Yidden. Avkan Asara V'kulu Yisrael. So too over here, you're going to also need to have 10 and all Yidden in order to have the din of Farhesya that you're required to be Meiser Nefesh. Frek the Gemara. Esther Farhesya Havoy. Esther was Farhesya, meaning everyone knew at the time that this woman, the Yidden all knew that she was Jewish, and she was being taken to Achashverosh's palace, and he was being born her. Now the Gemara, the Rashi seems to understand that she was not married, which is, the Megillah does not make any mention of it. So therefore, it was an Avera, but it's an Avera of Arayas. But if like we said, if it's Farhesya, any Avera, you're not allowed to, even like changing your shoelace, you're not allowed to, you have to be Meiser Nefesh. So how come Esther
Do you need the caveat that if she didn't, she would be killed? Is that I'm saying, are there because we had said that there are three Averas,
So
right?
had she resisted the king, she would have been killed. Yeah.
Right. And you need both. You need both.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. I'm assuming
she has to be forced into it, right? If she can say, I'm not interested, obviously, then she's mechayiv to do that.
No, because we said, this whole rule is about the other mitzvahs is in other words, if you're at a point where
you're being forced,
right?
And if you have both of those factors, you're forced to do it, you're not given an option, and there's either Farhesya or it's a Shas Hashmad, which other Rishonim ask, l'chayra Purim was also Shas Hashmad. It was a time of Malchus. The Malchus was forcing, but that's a separate question. But in any case, that's Rashi's understanding of the sugya. Taisvis causes a whole problem. It's here. It's also maybe in Makkos. I don't know, somewhere else. Ksubas, huge sugya of that we know that Esther was married to Mordechai. She was an Eshes Ish. So why do you have to talk about an issue of Farhesya? Why are we discussing that? Right? Because it should be Altzarayas.
Right.
So
is it a chayv misa if you're an Eshes with a guy?
So
I'm assuming so.
I'm sorry?
I assume that, in other words, it's a chayiv misa or karas.
Yeah, for sure. It's Eshes Ishes. It's chayiv. It's Chanuk. Right. It's Mises Bezdin, but the Gemara. She's right. It doesn't make a difference that he's a guy. If she's a Eshes Ish, she's not allowed to be born another man. So the Taisa says that the Gemara understood that, as the Gemara is going to say in a minute, that the din of Karka Olam, Esther Karka Olam, would certainly take away the issue of Eshes Ish. If she's not participating, then if she's not doing anything, she was not didn't do any action, so she's not required to actively sacrifice her life when she's not doing anything. But the question is, what about the Farhesya part of it? Farhesya doesn't help. That maybe one would think that Farhesya doesn't help the Karka Olam. So Zak the Gemara, Amar Abaye asked the Karka Olam Haisa. The Gemara concludes, no. Not only does Karka Olam address the issue of Eshes Ish, it also addresses the issue of a Farhesya. That's the way Taisa said. Rashi doesn't have this whole problem. He says, why do we have to assume she's married? Rava says a different teretz. Hanos Atzman Shani. He says when the guy is not trying to undermine Judaism, he's just after his own benefit, then in that case, there's no issue of Farhesya. We're not concerned of a Farhesya. It's the Farhesya is that you're being forced to give up Judaism. But you're not being forced to give up Judaism. They're just taking what they want. So, if they say change your shoelace to demonstrate that you're not a Jew, so then that's you have to sacrifice your life. But if they say to eat pork because we want to, it's COVID now and everyone has to eat pork, we think it's going to save your life. But they say we want to take like this case, he wants to be born Isha, so he's doing it for his own pleasure, not to enforce an ideology. then there's no din of Rasya. I'll prove it to you. Hani kavaki v'dumuniki. These certain types of lights, hadlakas, that they would assess from all the Yidden and then light them in the Beis Avodas Kechavim. They used to make this tax and take it from the Yidden. They would give it. Ella nosatzman shiny. Over there, they were doing it because they wanted to have lights. It wasn't because they wanted the Yidden to participate in their Avodah Zarah. Rashi says clearly they were not interested in the Avodah Zarah part of it. They just wanted the help from the Yidden. Hachanami nosatzman shiny. But the Rava l'tamei. Rava is going l'shitase. The Amar Rava. Akum de Amalei l'ha Yisrael k'toil as basasa b'shabbatzav v'shadi l'chiyusa. He commands a Yid, I want you to cut this fodder on Shabbos and feed it to the animals. V'loi katlina lach. And if not, I'm going to kill you. The Gemara says, likto v'loi lekatle. He should cut it on Shabbos and not get killed. Because this is not, this is again, hanos atzme. The guy is just trying to get his animal fed, and he doesn't want him to take a day off on Shabbos, but not because he wants to make him bedaf go work on Shabbos. Shadi l'nahara likta levelei likta. But if he says, lahaches, I want you to cut it and then throw it in the river, not to get any benefit, then he has to give up his life. My time, alavure milsa kaboy. He just, in that case, he wants him to be over. Bo mi name Ravami ben Noyach. So it's not clear if it means just for Avodah Zarah or for any of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. I think the Rishonim argue about this. Rashi says B'daf Kavod Chavim in one Rashi, then he says the next Rashi says all the 7 Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. But the point is, if a guy is told by his king, I want you to be over in my avodah zarah, and if not, I'm going to kill you, or possibly I want you to eat an ever achai, or else I'm going to kill you. Does he also have the din of kiddush Hashem that he has to sacrifice his life? Toshma shavim mitzvahs navim v'misa tabni havim. If you'll say there's the mitzvah of kiddush Hashem that he has to be mekadosh Shem Shemayim by giving up his life, that should be a 7th mitzvah. That if he's required to give up his life, that if he's asked to do one of these things, he has to be mekadosh Shem Shemayim. He says no. When the Torah says Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, this is just an aspect of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach that a guy has to sacrifice his life for them. It's not a separate mitzvah. My Havielo, what's taka the din? Amar Rav Adabarava Amri Beirav Siv L'davar Hazeh Yisrach Hashem L'Avdecha. This is talking about a guy who he got. He was talking to, he got a refuah from his mitzaras, from Elisha. He was very makatoiv, and he said he's going to observe the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, he's not going to be able to write the Zorah, but he said one thing the Rebbeinu Shalom should forgive me for. L'davar hazeh yislach Hashem l'avdecha. This thing the Rebbeinu Shalom should forgive me, but ba adoini beis rimoin, l'shtach v'shama, when my master is going to come to beis rimoin, and he's going to come to be over his avodah zarah, v'u nishan al yad, and he's going to be resting on me, and then I'm going to have to bow down with him. If not, I'm going to get killed. And Elisha told him, okay, that's not a problem. You can do that. You can go bed down. He shouldn't allow him to do it. He should have said, you have to mekadosh Shem Shemayim. No. The question is whether b'farhesya a guy has to be mekadosh Shem Shemayim. It seems clear that a guy b'tzina has no kiddush Shem Shemayim for him b'tzina. That he has to do it. It doesn't apply to him. He doesn't have to show cover to the Rebbeinu Shalom, so to speak. But b'farhesya, that's what we're clearing about. And that case over there was b'tzina because there weren't yidden. Like we said before, you have to have 10 yidden. There were no yidden around. A very fascinating story. There was one man who got literally lovesick for a certain woman. The Hallel Liboitina, and his heart got he started getting a heartache from it. They went and asked the doctors. The only thing that's going to cure him is if he's born her. If he's not born her, he's going to die. He has to die. He can't be born her. Tamid lefana aruma. They said, can she stand in front of him unclothed to satisfy his urges, and then he'll save his life. The Gemara says, Yom Val Tam Arum. The Chacham said he can't do that. Tisaper Ima Machayre Ageder. Maybe she can just talk to him, whisper sweet nothings from the other side of a fence, of a mechitza. Yabas v'lei tisaper Ima Machayre Ageder. Pligi bar Rav Yaakov bar Idiv Rav Shmuel bar Nachmeni. So they argue about this. Chadamar Eishes is Haisa. One says she was an Eishes is. Chadamar Pnuya Haisa. One says no, she was not a Pnuya. Bishlam Mama Eishes is Haisa Shapir. As we all know, we all heard from our Rebbeim Adam Fenaitim. Abizraya Davai Dezara is a Deraisa, and this is Abizraya the Gili Arayas. And this is Abizraya the Gili Arayas, and it's also the same as being born in Eishes. So therefore we can understand it. This is the source for that halacha. Why so far that they couldn't do this to save a life? Papa says, like we said before, the Gabi, a person being allowed to kill someone when they're being paigim and isha ba'arayas, that the pagam will machshav that. So over here, we're worried that even if the woman is masculine, there's going to be the mishpacha is going to be very fabisan about it. This was a heroic shah that you couldn't allow such a thing. Let him marry her to save his life if she's a pnuya. That wouldn't have helped. And you're going to find this fascinating. The yetzer of bia went away; it doesn't exist. The nisna la'ivra avera, and the whole tam, the whole geschmack of Gili Arayis is only with being over with the transgression. Shenam amayim gnuvim yitaku, the lechem sesarim yanayim. That it's a part of mayim gnuvim yitaku. He wouldn't have been happy if he married her. He only wanted to be born her be'isser. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad we got to learn this tonight when I didn't feel